Okay, I wanted to make a video on why, or actually not why, but the types of businesses that we are interested in, that we typically look at. Most of which are in the trades, or have something to do with the trades. You know, we have masonry, roofing, carpentry, painting, concrete, design, insurance, material supply, all the common denominator with all of them is definitely the building trades, and the restoration industry. So, I think it's important to state that, in my mind, the go-to businesses are always the human need businesses, and I've always thought that. I was a landlord for a long time. Like humans, they need somewhere to live. So there's always going to be a demand for housing, right? So I decided to start buying houses, multi-units, so on and so forth. And I would hold them. I wouldn't flip them, but I'd hold them. And in construction too. So construction, we need shelter, and we need maintenance on that shelter, and we need to build new shelters. So, that's where construction comes in, and so does all the corresponding businesses involved in that, right? So, and I also think that, things that involve food, humans need food. I think that death or health, right? Like these are things that are ultimately going to happen to all humans, and we're always going to have a need for some part of that service. Regardless, I was real interested in the funeral home business. I was going to turn one of my old houses into a funeral home. Then I really started investigating, noticed all the red tape that was involved in it, so I decided against it. But as of right now, we do have some properties that we rent out as well. But right now, our main focus is 100%, in the building trades. That's where most of our emphasis goes. That's where all our time is spent and all our money is spent, investing in too, because that's what we understand as well. We understand the construction business, and we try to manage our companies in ways. We try to manage our companies in ways that our competitors don't, and that's really been one thing that I have always tried to think or have at the forefront of my mind is that am I doing what my competitors are not doing, or am I doing the same exact thing that all my competitors are doing? And you see it very evidently, particularly in spaces like roofing. Like everybody advertises the same way. Everyone's got the same, logos on their catch-alls. Everyone's got the same billboards. Everyone's got the same Port Authority buses, plastered with their names on it. Everyone's marketing the same way. Everyone has, Job Nimbus or whatever CRM that is popular that year. It's always the same. So like I said, I'm not saying that I'm completely absent of doing what other people do, but I always try to keep it fresh in my mind that, like, if there's those opportunities to go beyond what my competitors are not willing to do, I'm going to do that, right? And it's like, and it's a very common thing in human nature is like Earl Nightingale always says, like, follow the follower, right? Like you start in kindergarten, and when you go into kindergarten, you do what all the other kids are going to do, right? You dress how the other kids are going to dress, and you go like that all the way through school. Then when you get a job, it's like your first day on the job. What do? You find the person that looks like they know what they're doing and do the exact same thing, right? It's following the follower. So like I'm not guilty of doing that, but I really try to keep it, with all our companies. I try to beat it into the manager's brains, like, let's do what everybody else isn't doing, right? So yeah, like I said, we are looking for construction companies or construction associated to construction companies. You know, we want an easy to run business. That's the thing. We want an easy to run business. We want a business that so easy to run that we could put an idiot in the manager spot and it would still run itself, right? We're not going to put an idiot in there, but we are going to, you know, we're going to put someone very, you know, adequate and worthy and that can do the job well. But we want a business that's so easy to run, a moron can do it. You know, just like Warren Buffett always says. He says we want a business an idiot can run because someday an idiot will be running it, right? So a little bit about our managers, right? So, you know, the big thing is, and that's the first thing, you know, most people think about is the compensation of our managers. You know, we definitely want to pay our managers, and to be perfectly honest with you, all good employees, regardless of the hierarchical structure, we want to pay them as much as possible and get to that gray line of being unprofitable and profitable and try to get right up in there. So they can make as much as they can for the given industry that they're in, right? Because, and I've talked about it before, based off the industry, that's going to dictate, you know, what your cap is. And that's not just in construction, that's in anything, right? And, you know, I was just having this discussion recently with a guy that I work with, and, you know, we were talking about masons in particular on the East Coast of the United States, and anyone can chime in and debate about this, but, you know, if the most you can possibly make as a tradesman working for a company, right? The most that you can make as a tradesman is if you work for a non-union company working prevailing wage work. That is the most in your check you will see. The only other way you're going to make more than that is if you branch off and you start your own company, which brings on, you know, a whole, you know, book of other liabilities you have to you know, take accountability for. So, but yeah, that is, if you can realize that fact, it's like, okay, I'm either going to be content with X amount of money, or I'm going to have to branch off and do my own thing. Like, it's a very easy decision, one or the other. You're either willing to take this amount of money for the rest of your life at variable increases, or you could take the risk of making way more money and starting your own company. And it's just, you know, I mean, statistics show that more people are just going to work for a company than rather start their own company, and that's no secret. You know, and honestly, like, our managers, in my opinion, and it happens in a lot of my companies, the managers get paid more than the owner does. You know, I had a company last year in 2025 that didn't make any money. They lost money, right? I had a company that made less than. I had a company in 2024, a different company that lost money, right? Both of the times, they never lost money before in a year, but at the same time too, I had to make sure that I wasn't taking anything from the company. When a company's doing poorly, and it's in a cash crunch, or you know, it's waiting on, you know, over 90 AR or whatever the case may be, as the owner, you have to realize that the health of the company comes before your pocketbook, and I don't think that's shown. I don't think that's always a popular idea amongst owners, because, like, and I get it too. It's like, hey, I own this company. This thing should be making me money. Well, if it's not making money, then you're obviously not going to be making any money. So you need to make the adjustments, whether that be in your personal life or your personal finances or whatever, and have enough liquid reserves to say, like, I don't need to have money from this company every month or every quarter or whatever it is, right? So that's something that should be said. But those managers that are working for you, they still need to get paid. Now, obviously, if they're going to continue to lose, then something else needs to be adjusted. But if you just have one down year, for instance, I had a roofing company in 2024, like I just mentioned, it lost money, right? First time it ever lost any money. And I'll tell you what, the guy who runs that company is extremely savvy and learned from his mistakes and buckled down in 2025. In 2025, he made more money than all the years prior. So you know what I mean? It's like, what, just because they have one losing year does not necessarily mean that they should be canned or punished or what have you, Yeah, like I said, the type of person that will hold off giving raises and bonuses when they don't think it's the right time. I have a couple managers who won't take raises, who won't take their bonuses that I'm giving them, and I've been told several times, and I give these guys so much credit. I suppose they are well off, right? But at the same time, too, they care more about the health of the company than they do about enriching themselves. I've heard it more than 4 times. I'm not taking a raise right now. I'm not taking a bonus right now. And in fact, I remember a couple times that the raises that I was given to the manager, he held and gave out to his employees, which I think is extremely credible, and I think it's rare too. So it's something that these are the type of managers that you want to have if you're not going to be managing the company yourself, right? And especially during those downtimes, and any company can have downtimes, and it gets so frustrating. Last year was a frustrating year for a couple of my companies. We couldn't figure things out, but it's like if you go back to the granular level of how a company can make more money, there's at least in the service industry, which construction is, there's 3 different things. Number 1, increase your sales numbers, and when I say sales numbers, I mean if it was $100,000 job last year, make it a $110,000 job. That's 1, right? Start increasing margins by 10-15% by adding that 10-15% on every time, right? Number 2, increase efficiency. That means look at your processes. How much time is being wasted out in the field or in the office? What is unproductive time? You have to adjust those things. And number 3 is to always be cutting costs. Always be cutting costs, right? And a lot of times too, this has happened to me multiple times, and I know it's happened to other people. It's like you're looking at your business and you're looking at your profit and loss statement, you're looking at all your costs, cost of goods sold, and all your expenses, and you're like, how can I get my company to make more money? And it's typically not one thing, that one line item you're like, oh, boom, there it is. It's like it's tiny pieces from everywhere, right? And even when you do take those tiny pieces everywhere, you may not see evidence of it in one month or 1 quarter or 2 quarters. But I'll tell you what, it will, if you do those 3 things and you continue to always exercise those things, it will show results. It has to. It absolutely has to. It's just like running a business is just like having a diet, right? It's like, if I'm counting my calories every single day, if I'm not eating past 8 o'clock at night, and I'm doing some exercise every day, I will eventually have to see results. And it is the same thing with running a business. And just like running a business, if I let my diet go, well, I'm going to get fat. It's going to get out of control. Same thing with running a business, right? The employees are going to take advantage. People aren't going to, time theft and so on and so forth. So, and like I said, we're back to the whole manager thing. I always think about it. It's like, what's the motivation of the manager? Is the first thing on their mind in a job interview like, how much sick time do I get, or how much vacation time do I get? What's my, you know what I mean? This and that. That is more of a hired gun, employee down the line status, in my opinion, right? That's that's almost like it reminds me of a salesman, because salesmen, I'll tell you what, salesmen, they can make more money than anyone in a company. I know, I got some salesmen that make a ton of money based off of commissions, right? I know, I can think of a couple right now that make more than I do. But it's you know what, that sales are important. Sales are extremely important, and without the sales, you don't have jobs to do. So those guys need to, they got to be out there getting the work at an appropriate margin so that you can make money, and so everybody can make money, right? But it's a two-way street. They need to make money, but the guys in the field need to produce the jobs, and the people in the office need to do all the correct paperwork so everything's right and you get paid and the insurance is up, and yeah, I mean, you know the rest. But when I think about the managers and how I manage, you can't control everything. You can't control everything. You have to understand that there are only two things in this world that you can worry about, and those are things that you have control over and things you don't have control over, right? The Serenity Prayer talks about it. Give me the information so that I know the difference between the things I do have control over and the things I don't have control over. For instance, Q1 here in the Northeast of the United States, I have zero control over the freeze and snow. Zero control. It will drive me nuts hoping for a mild winter. It'll drive me fucking crazy because it has. But now it's like, okay, I can't control that. I'm gonna stop thinking about it. What I do have control over is how I start stacking my reserves in those times of low production. How I hold off inside work for people who typically work on the exterior at the same or not better margins and productivity as they would outside, right? So like, that's just an example, but it's like, and I like I said, I'm guilty of it myself, but there's only certain things that you can control, and if you can differentiate the ones you can't control from what you can't control, things get a little bit easier. And that's not just with business, that's with anything in this world, right? I don't micromanage my managers. I absolutely don't, because here's the thing. I created a system, and if I go back and micromanage my managers, I'm destroying my own system. It's a paradox, you know what I mean? I can't do both things at one time. I can't expect them to rely on me while at the same time not rely on me. That goes with anyone who's running a business and has a manager running their business for them. It's like, you're making that conscientious decision in the first place that you trust their judgment. And yeah, it's a risk, but at the same time too, you can't jump in there at the first time they make a decision where you don't completely, you don't completely agree with. Now, if they ask you about something, you can give them your opinion, but at the same time too, like, you can't have a foot in both doors. It's one or the other. So like, if I had a manager this year, he built a brand new showroom. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He didn't ask me, and I didn't. I trust his judgment because it's an investment that's going to help with sales, and it already has. So he was right, So, but at the same time too, yeah, I could cringe at like, oh God, that's expensive. Oh, it's just like, we're taking guys out of the field and working inside here for nothing, and the materials cost a lot. But at the same time too, I'm here for the long run. I'm here for the next 60 years at that company. So like, I want that showroom to assist in future sales, which it's been less than a year, and it already has. So bravo to him. I give him the accolades for making a great decision, you know. But we did, but we did spend a lot of money on that sucker, which fucking sucks. Yeah, like I said, and that's the big part of it too. It's like you have to let other people make these decisions because, you know, otherwise you are putting a ceiling on yourself. I can only work this much. I can only go up to this much without the help of other people. You know, you can't be successful without bringing other people up with you. You know, so and here's something too. If when thinking about management, there's two schools of thought. There is to promote within, and then there is to bring an outside manager in. So I think there's pros and cons to both, and I've seen pros and cons to both. I have promoted people within, and I have seen, because they're deserving of it, right? They're working in a company, and they're putting in their time, and they're putting in their hard work, and they're being promoted. But at the same time, too, they don't always get the same respect from the guys they used to work with when they were on the same level. It's very interesting. Now, I have also seen it from bringing outside management in. It's like, you know, they're the boss. They come in as the boss. I've seen that several times with buying companies and bringing a manager in. Like, that is a unquestioned position by the old employees. It's just like, you know, he's the new boss. Not that he's like a reigning dictator, but like it's understood. He is the boss. We got to do what he says, right? There is no second guessing. Well, I'm sure there's some second guessing, but you know, everyone has some second guessing, right? There's always going to be some employees that put up some more barriers than others, more problems than others, but that's anywhere you go, right? Like I said, this is like in the trades. The trades now are getting trickier in a sense. They're getting trickier in a sense that, and I don't know if this is in other industries too. Maybe it is, but it seems like everybody wants to be their own boss now. Nobody wants to be an employee. Everybody wants to be like their own 1099, right? Which is, hey, that's great. And I've lost a lot of guys who wanted to start their own thing. Some are still doing it. Some didn't last very long, right? Either way, I mean, all the more power to them. I mean, but at the same time too, it's like, yeah, I'll absolutely subcontract an old employee who started their own company, but at the same time too, it is not guaranteed whatsoever. You know, my W-2 employees come first. I have the allegiance, and I have the responsibility to them to provide them for the 40-hour work week of somewhere to work, right? I don't have that with a subcontractor. There's no guarantee in that, just like there's no guarantee, because that's what, you know, a lot of people, they go off and start their own business, and then they'll sub for the company 100% of the time that they were working for as a W-2 employee. But at this, you know, you got to remember, like, that company has no responsibility in providing you with work. And I've seen it happen, and I've been questioned and called out on it whenever I don't give those people the same amount of work as when they were an employee. But hey, that's just the breaks. But at the same time, it's like, and where is it really going? When like, how beneficial is it sometimes, I think, to branch off and be essentially a 1099 employee, right? Like, everybody wants to be their own boss, and I don't, you know, I hear a lot about ESOPs and you know, I go back to, I don't know, it's just, it seems like a power struggle. You know, Thomas Sowell always talks about, you know, labor without management is chaos, and I totally believe that, because, like, who's dictating the order of operations and things, right? And that's not to say that anybody can be a good manager, and that's not what I'm saying whatsoever. But at the same time too, and I've seen it, you can't just throw a bunch of guys on a job site without a foreman. Because everyone has their own opinion, regardless of how good they are and how well experienced they are. Like, you have to have a point of manager on site. Like, there has to be, or just, you know, it's nowhere near as productive as without a manager. I'll just say that, right? But no, I think that. I think there's a difference between, and I've talked about it in other videos, I think there's a difference between being a business owner and running a legitimate business versus being a business owner and working in the business every single day as a job, right? Like if your business can't run without you, then I mean, I hate to say it, you have a job, not a business, right? And I mean, I guess you could say I can work whenever I want to work, but you're not going to produce anything when you're not working. That's the thing. And you know, that's typically, I see this a lot with guys trying to sell their companies, and you know, there's no difference between the company and the owner. And the problem is, like, those are two completely different things. Those are two completely different entities. There's a human being and there's a company, and they are both you know, apart from each other. They are not one and the same. However, a lot of the times I see, you know, the owner, one bank account, the business's bank account, it's his third pocket, and that's no good. You can't have that, right? Like, you can't have the business completely funding your lifestyle, because, you know, in down times, you're gonna be in some real trouble, right? So I think that you know, this, back to what I was saying about, almost as if it's like one of your children or a close friend or like your wife or girlfriend or whatever. It's like, you have to worry about the health of that company almost more so than your own, because, you know, especially if you got a lot of employees, it supports all these families. I think about that all the time. I think about the, you know, hundreds of families that are banking off of our companies, and I think about making the right decisions about you know, financial decisions, because they could all be affected by that, right? Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, the trades are definitely what we are trying to, you know, continue to embark in. We are looking at other things, but the trades, I think, are the thing that we're most familiar with, the most comfortable with. I don't know what the future holds for the trades, like I said, and it's been years, and it's been harder and harder to find competent people to work for you. I know that, you know, there is a lot of high salary people in the trades that I think are getting close to. And here's the thing: I don't ever want to tell a guy that I can't pay them anymore because they're not worth it, you know. And I have, but at the same time too, it's not because they're not worth it. It's because the service that they're providing doesn't support it. And I've like I said, I've talked about this in other videos, but it always comes back to the business owner that he's the dickhead, right? But if the business owner continues to do that and they go out of business and everybody loses their job, who's the real dickhead? The business owner would be the dickhead in that situation, right? So that's something that myself and my managers are constantly very, very thoughtful of, because, you know, labor costs are typically the highest cost in a business. but I don't think. But back to what I was saying about the future of the trades. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Obviously, you know, the construction is different now. You know, but you know, I don't think that the same type of tradesmen are out there that were, you know, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. I remember. Even on the job sites. I was on a job site today. Completely different than 2002, 2003. I remember I first got a job when I was 18, and I remember when I was my first real job site I was on, like the first few months, all I was trying to do was get through the day without getting screamed at. That was like my one goal, but I would get screamed. And it wasn't even like just from the boss. It was from the bricklayers. It was from the other laborers. I mean, they would just scream at you. And I remember that the first like 6 months I worked there, I was like, I just want to go through and get screamed at and not demoralized, you know, in front of like other grown men. And but like that shit does not happen now. I do not see that now, you know, whatsoever. I see a lot of people maybe a little bit thinner skinned these days than back then, and maybe I'm showing my age by telling stories like this, like back in my day, but it's true, you know. Like I mean, I've talked to many employees about you know, they've come to me one-on-one or come to HR, and I've heard about it. It's like, hey, like essentially so-and-so is making fun of me, or so-and-so is talking to me negatively, and it's like, I don't feel like that would have happened, you know, back in the early 2000s. So maybe that's part of it. And man, I don't know. I don't, but some of those same guys are still around, and man, that hustle's still there. So there's still some real hustlers out there that I'm fortunate enough to work with and work for me. That is a plus. That is a plus. Do I see as many young kids coming in as I used to? No way. Do I see as many hustlers coming in as I used to? Nope. And I'm not just speaking for myself. I talk to business owners that I'm friends with all the time, and it's always the same thing. So I don't know. I definitely think people in construction are going to have the upper hand of having these skills, you know, and they're just going to continue to get paid more and more. Like, unfortunately, they can't, you know, it seems like, you know, they've reached a limit in some cases, but especially in the mechanical trades. I really think in the mechanical trades, those guys are going to be really calling their shots, and you're going to pay this or nothing. You know what I mean? If you have your plumbing backing up all into your living room or your basement or something, like, you can't really negotiate there. Just like you can't negotiate with a heart surgeon about to give you open heart surgery. Like, you're either paying for it or not. You know, and maybe some people will start getting like some kind of like construction insurance, or I guess that would be general liability or home insurance, whatever. But they always fight with you too whenever things are too expensive. You know, that Xactimate program for insurance. Like, I got a look of it a few years ago, like what the services were, and even now I think they're really cracking down and being cheaper than before. You know, insurance companies are smart and they're getting hip to things. So. Like I said, that was just a ramble, but mostly, like I said, I thought it was important to talk about what type of business we're in, which is the trades, and that definitely what we're looking for, but also to kind of give you an insight on what our, what we try to look for in a manager and what we kind of expect in a manager, or at least what I do, right? So, but yeah, that is it, and thanks for watching till the end.